It's twice as hard to get a rancher customer, but they're 5 times as loyal.
Welcome to Leaders of the West, a podcast for innovators and changemakers. I'm your host, Jessie Jarvis, the founder of the West, and I'm sitting down with agriculturalists, entrepreneurs, executives, and everyone in between with the goal of digging into the strategies, mindsets, and lessons that have been crucial to the success of ag and Western. Whether you're carrying on the next generation of your family's operation, starting something from scratch, or determined to climb up the leadership ladder, we're going to inspire you to continue to dream big, growing not just you, but the future of agriculture and Western as a whole. Let's go. Before we get started with today's episode, I want to tell you guys about the directory. I know I've talked about it before, but the directory is the only spot on the internet where you can connect and hire freelancers and contractors who are agriculture or Western based. You can find anything from graphic designers to photographers to business coaches, copywriters, event speakers, social media managers, web designers, videographers, bookkeepers, accountants, marketing agencies, and that doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of all the businesses and entrepreneurs who are listed. And as I mentioned before, they all have businesses that focus on the agriculture or Western industries. They get what you do because that's what they do. They understand all the little details that make ag, Western, and the equine industries what they are. So the next time you need to find somebody, instead of making an I'm looking for post on Facebook, just use the directory. You can search by category, location, type of program they need to work in. Any way you can think of needing to search, you can do it. And it has been game-changing for a lot of the businesses who are listed. I just got an email yesterday from someone who told me she had been speaking pro bono, but she wanted to make speaking a personal revenue stream this year and really go all in. She created a profile on the directory, and through that, she booked her very first paid speaking opportunity. Is that not the coolest thing? And that's not the only success story that we've seen, but I will say no matter how many of them we hear, every single one of them is so rewarding, not just to me, but to our entire team. If you're an entrepreneur or a business and you want to be listed in the directory, all you have to do is create an account, fill out your profile, and then you can pay monthly or annually. There are new entrepreneurs and businesses joining every day, which is awesome for those of you who are using the platform to search. Whether you're somebody who's looking to hire a freelancer or a contractor, or you're one who is looking to be found by new clients and customers, you guys can go to ofthewest.co/directory to find out more. That's ofthewest.co/directory. You guys, we are back, and this week we have an incredible guest here on Leaders of the West. We are sitting down with Terrell Miller. He is the founder of Cattlesoft, along with his wife, Penny. So you maybe aren't familiar with Cattlesoft, but I can guarantee that you guys are familiar with some of their programs. They are the founders and creators of CattleMax, the cattle management software. They also have CattleTags.com, CattleScales.com, CattleDNA.com, and Ranching.com. Terrell and his wife, Penny, first met at Texas A&M when they were both in undergraduate programs. And that is also when they first found the need for a software that is now known as CattleMax. At the time, they were just wanting to manage their own personal herds. This was back in 1999. And we hear the story through Terrell's lips of how that all came to be and how when they first started the software, they had to mail out discs to people that would give them a free trial. And then somebody would have to call in and give their credit card over the phone to then be given a key, which would unlock the program so that they could have full access to it. Obviously, those of us who are, 90s babies and older than that, remember those days. This was back when dial-up internet was a thing, which the kids these days don't even understand what that noise is. But all of that to say, I was really inspired by Terrell and his vision, just knowing that back in 1999, creating something like a software to manage your cattle herd was not something that was on anybody's radar at the time. So he and his wife, Penny, are people who are forward thinkers. And not only were they able to go on and create an incredibly successful business in CattleMax, but they also saw opportunities to add on to those with CattleTags, CattleScales, now CattleDNA, and Ranching.com. And just really seeing how all of those businesses are able to flourish together is really inspiring. And I know that you guys are going to enjoy today's show as much as I do. So we are going to get right to it. Terrell Miller, this is Leaders of the West. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning of things. What inspired you to create Cattlesoft back in 1999? at the time, what problem were you trying to solve? Was CattleMax the first iteration of the business, or where did things start?
Sure. Well, we didn't say that we wanted to create CattleMax. I mean, nobody ever starts out saying where they want to go, and that's where they end up. So really what happened, my wife and I were engaged at the time, students at Texas A&M, and she was trying to get graduated so that we could go on and start our lives together. And she was trying to find some independent study projects. And I enjoyed the technology stuff. She enjoyed the ag stuff. She was ag leadership major, and she was at A&M on a Houston Livestock Scholarship. So we decided to create a database to keep track of our own family herd. So that's kind of how it started. And being there at Texas A&M, a lot of great faculty in the ag economics and animal science departments. And so you start knocking on doors, and then it's kind of where we ran into some folks there that really liked where we were going and put us in contact with our first customer.
So what was that first iteration, or MVP, I should say? Because, again, this is 1999. Laptops were not a thing. Smartphones were not a thing. We still had dial-up internet. This was back when, at one time, was CattleMax like on a disk that you would put in your computer or like as a software program, because it probably wasn't online. Like, how did that work? I know it's far different what it is today than where it started out.
Sure. Well, back then it was on a CDs, how we distributed it. And it was a completely different process. So we'd work for many months and build it and get it ready on a CD and then mail the CD off to have it mass produced. Mass being 100 at a time. We still have customers like 20 years, 25 years later that'll come up and go, I have my CattleMax CD still.
That thing's got to be so scratched. I'm sure it doesn't work anymore.
The versions of Windows are so old that you really can't run those old versions. It's like so old. But it did start out. There were laptops at the time, but they were really heavy, just giant bricks. I mean, they were really, really thick and heavy, and lasted like 2 hours battery life.
So how exactly did that look? Because like we've kind of established, the 90s were not a time when most ranchers were jumping on their computers to take records or obviously online. So what was it like to launch a software company for cattle producers when many of them didn't even have a computer, or were they accessing it on a daily basis?
Well, when I told our kids, we tell them the story of getting started in 1999, and they referred to that as the late 1900s. And I've never felt so old.
Oh, you just made me feel old.
So, I mean, that's, how we did back then. We had the software. We would mail out free trial CDs, and somebody would load the software on their computer, and they could use it for 30 days. If they wanted to continue using the software, then they could call in, give us a credit card, and we would give them a key, a little serial number to unlock the software.
Yes, I remember those keys from when Microsoft Word and like the Microsoft Office suite was the same thing. You had the key that was, you had to go buy the disk at Walmart, and yes.
Yes. Back then it was and that was just part of the distribution process, if you will. The other part was when updates were out. It's not like nowadays where you just sign in and the software is updated. They had to request update CDs, or those that were on the internet could download updates if they had a fast connection.
Wow, that's something, I had kind of forgotten about that. And things now that we take for granted. So you had shared what that first iteration was. You and your wife had built it just to keep track of your own family. And then through professors at A&M and other people and connections, you saw that there was a need for this. But again, I know that those original products are not what the platform is today. So can you kind of walk us through that 25, 26 years of the business? And then you've also developed a few other businesses along the way.
Sure. Well, it's interesting as I go back and look at the core of what CattleMax is. And by the way, this is a fun trivia that not many people know. The way that we came up with Max for the name is, I'm more of a data-driven programming tech kind of person. and I wanted to call the software Cattle something. Didn't know. And so I wrote a little bit of code that said generate all 3 and 4 letter combinations in the whole alphabet. And, obviously you throw out like ZZZZ, ZZZY, but then went through the list and it was, I think that the top ones were Ace and Max. And I'm like, Max, that's exactly what we want. So it was not this great branding strategy. It was just this popped out of the list.
The developer in you is how you came up with the name. That is awesome.
But on the question of how we really got our start with the software, in the beginning, our very first customer was from a ranch nearby, and he was in his probably late 50s and had about a 500 head cow-calf operation, and he needed a software program that was easy to use to track the cattle. And I remember their official request for quote or request for proposal was a single sheet of paper, and it was about 4 sentences long in a paragraph, and then a list of their pastures. I still have that page of what they wanted. And they really didn't know what they wanted other than they had some basic needs of cattle inventory, breeding, pregnancy, weaning, sales, and health. And 25 years later, that's still the core of CattleMax, but we've obviously built out a lot of advanced stuff, equipment, and pasture management, and that kind of thing.
How critical was the smartphone coming into play, and how did that impact your business? Because now, obviously, something that we could only access when we were at home, and we still had to have the piece of paper that maybe we wrote something down on, take it back home and transcribe it or transpose it digitally. Now we're walking around with a phone that we can access all of that information at any time.
I look at the smartphone and specifically the iPhone as one of the 3 biggest technology advancements that I've seen in our 25 years. The first being the internet, where people can find information online, get help online, email, download updates. The second is the smartphone, and the third is AI that we're just starting to get into. So the great thing about when the iPhone came out is it was really easy to use. I push the email button and my email shows up. I push the call button and I can make calls, and I push the browser and there's a browser in there, which is really simple to us now. But I can remember years ago, so many people would call in and the phrase was computer illiterate. I'm computer illiterate. And so people saw that when they couldn't use software, it was because of their ignorance or inability. But then when they started using the iPhone, they go, I can use this phone to check my email, to look at cattle prices, to make calls. If the software doesn't work, it's the software's fault, not my fault.
It's not user error.
No, it was this incredible empowerment that's been really great because it brings the technology to a lot more people, and it's really confidence in themselves more so than it is this mastery of technology.
No, I absolutely see that. Although obviously there's still a lot of things that are those one-off user errors. I know we see that on Of the West often too. Somebody will email and, oh, I'm having this problem. This sucks. And I'm like, well, you're the first person who's ever reported this problem, so I don't necessarily think it's us, but let me help walk you through it. It's definitely like, I really have to take a step back and how dare you say my product sucks?
We get into that from time to time just with features or especially use cases, how people are using the software, and it's just as much data. And they're really great opportunities to show how good your customer service is. It's not, problems happen everywhere. It's not the avoidance of problems or elimination. It's how you respond to them.
Well, and because you had mentioned AI, I will actually share this is not necessarily relatable to this episode, but because we're talking about this, one of the things that I have used recently is just that in customer service. If somebody, let's say they send us an email and they're really, really mad, and I then naturally kind of want to go into defensive mode and, well, this isn't my fault. This is you did this wrong or whatever it was. I put my email into ChatGPT and then I say make this kind and with constructive criticism and helpful. And then ChatGPT helps me versus remember how we've all been told you write your email and you wait a day before you send it because then you're not so hot and bothered about it. Well, that's I just use ChatGPT to soften it substantially, and then I can send it out, and it's not as offensive to everybody.
It takes out the, I'm sorry you feel that way.
Yes. It did. One time I even had to tell ChatGPT, I was like, but I'm mad about this. Like, it softened it a little too much. But again, just another great use of technology in that way. So on the topic of AI, because you are such a forward thinker, what do you think that is going to do for the livestock industry and for cattle producers? What are some of the lower hanging fruit, if you will?
Well, AI is just really, and we're talking about artificial intelligence, not insemination. The only industry we have to clarify that in. Where we're at now with the AI reminds me a lot of as the internet was really starting to make its way into agriculture. And when you try to go, where do you think it's going to be? I mean, we're all just guessing. But there was the Animal Ag Tech Conference in Dallas a little while back. And one of the things that was a big topic there was AI. And the way that I explained it on my panel is I don't think that AI is going to magically make all of our decisions. I mean, you take two commercial operations a mile down the road, and they may have the same type of cattle, same breed, but completely different goals. So which bull should I pick? Well, that's more of a personal decision and your own goals. But really where I think AI is going to help a lot is in working through and helping you wade through the incredible volumes of information. Genomic testing is going to really change the commercial cattle industry. It already is, and we're betting really big on that with our CattleDNA.com and what we're seeing producers. So it'll help work through more and more data and really be more efficient.
Well, and two, I think for many people, and even with something like CattleMax, okay, so we have the data, but it doesn't do us any good to have the data if we're not going to then analyze the data or use the data. Like there's no point to write it down if you're not then going to use it in that next step. So I think that AI is going to be very helpful in bringing that together and helping to then analyze it. And how can we make better, smarter management decisions for our operations with the data that we already had?
Right. I think so. The AI is really going to help working through that. And one of the things I guess that I see our producers sometimes using CattleMax is they do a great job of entering all the data and they don't run any reports. And I'm always encouraging, not our users, I'm encouraging our customers to really try and get information out, run reports, because otherwise you've just created an electronic file cabinet.
And that's not specific to you. Like, as you say that, I think about QuickBooks. What is the point of using a product like QuickBooks or Ambrook or whatever it may be to put all of your financial information in there if you never actually pull a report to see your profit and loss or your balance sheet or any of those other data-driven metrics that are so important to the future of our business?
Exactly. I mean, that, unlike QuickBooks, QuickBooks keeps you out of trouble with the government and helps you make your tax payments and all of that. There's really not much of a compliance aspect in the cattle record keeping at this point. So it really can truly go into this electronic file cabinet unless you take the initiative to pull some information out and run reports.
So kind of taking a step back, because I know we do have a lot of listeners who are outside of the cattle industry and just as many who are in the cattle industry. If somebody has considered using CattleMax before, but they're not already customers or users of the product, can you just kind of give us a little bit of the ins and outs of what can it actually do for an operation and how does it make a producer's life easier day to day?
Sure. Well, CattleMax is a cattle management software. It's web-based, so accessible anywhere with the internet, designed for cow-calf operations, for commercial as well as registered. And so that's sort of who our target is there. We do have customers with preconditioned cattle, a little bit of backgrounding, but it's not really designed for stocker operations. It's really specific to cow-calf. And what it does is keep track of all of the cattle records. So breeding, pregnancy, medical, weight, genomics, purchase and sales, production history, EPDs for registered cattle. So it keeps all of the cattle records And it also keeps all the ranch records, such as pastures and pasture management, when you're spraying, when you're cutting hay, keeps track of your equipment, inventory and maintenance. The idea behind CattleMax is really it to be the hub for the ranch's records. And then as data needs to flow in or out, whether that's to breed associations or customers or in from a feed yard or in from a genomic testing provider, all the data flows in and out freely.
Can you expand on that last point about how the software does then kind of work with other breed associations and things like that to bring data in and out?
Sure. Well, CattleMax makes it easy for people to keep their records up to date on the farm. And then when they need to exchange data with the breed association, we have all of the integrations built in where you can generate your cattle records, your electronic registrations directly from within with the software, so you don't have to re-enter the data on your breed association website.
Oh, that is awesome, especially for those who anytime that they've got to sit down and do paperwork, right? That is such a cumbersome thing that, oh, I'll do that tomorrow. I'll do that tomorrow. That's one of those things that's like the easy button. You can do that today.
Well, we try to make it easy for producers. That's really our goal. And one of our sort of guiding principles is you shouldn't have to enter the same piece of information more than one time.
I bet that has been so critical for people. So on that note, what kind of feedback have you heard from other customers over the years that have helped shape the platform into what it is today? Because I can imagine that you guys are a very feedback-driven organization to where when producers say, hey, this would be helpful for this reason, you're going to implement it because you know that it is going to be able to help not just that producer, but a number of other users.
Well, one of the really neat things about CattleMax is that it really is producer-driven. I mean, my wife and I, we're in the cattle business. Everybody on our team is in the cattle business too. So we have a lot of knowledge just within our own team of customer service and product design that we're using the cattle. A lot of the feedback comes from within. So we'll talk with our own team, and a lot of features in CattleMax are driven by comments like, I was out working cattle this weekend and I wish there was a way to do X. And then we get back in the office on Monday and say, it needs to do X.
That is awesome. One of the women who works for you, Dawn Anderson.
Yes.
She doesn't live too far from me and we're great friends with them, but she's always had the kindest things to say about you and the whole CattleSoft company. So,
Dawn and James, they're something else. They've been very long time customers of CattleMax, much longer than Dawn has worked with us. That's one of the really neat things with our team. I mean, our product development manager, Jimmy Curtis, he's been a lifelong friend for 25 years, but he's only been on our team for only 10 years. PJ Porter is our product coordinator, and she's been on the team for 10 years, but she and I are both I'm in my late 40s, and I have emails back in my 20s of her sending emails saying, hey, make CattleMax do this. So, I mean, we just had this long time with a lot of our team.
That is awesome. Well, and it definitely makes for a really strong company culture in that is not only are they passionate about the company, but they're very passionate about the product because many of them are using the product in their daily lives. And I think that that's one of those things that's a little bit unique when it comes to our industry that's probably not as applicable to other outside industries. So we've talked a lot about CattleMax, the management software, but you guys have really grown that umbrella of CattleSoft into tags and scales and DNA. And before we started recording, you were telling me about ranching.com, which you guys send out a weekly email. And I think it's, did you say 90,000 subscribers?
Yes, that's correct. Over 90,000 each week.
Holy cow. So how did those additional pieces come into play and how do they work together with CattleMax?
Sure. Well, our CattleTags.com really was our first new product we had done since CattleMax. And that started out of some conversations where a couple of us went to visit with Allflex at their headquarters in Dallas. And we were just trying to better understand, and 15 years ago, understand how to make the EID readers work better with CattleMax. And so our customer service team was talking with their team, and we all ended up going out to lunch with some of the Allflex team, including the CEO at the time. And the CEO says, "Hey, Terrell, are you guys open to selling our tags?" Without even hesitating, I said no. And he's like, "Why?" And I said, "We're all digital. We don't have warehouses. We don't have shipping. We all work from our own ranches." And he said, "Oh, but we can drop ship." And using the same technology that prints the tags in the feed stores, we can print custom tags. And also selling the matched pairs and the EID readers. And so we created CattleTags.com to sell tags to our customers, because you can't manage your cattle until you've identified them.
Yeah, that is a very natural fit.
It is. And I mean, here we are 13 years later, and it's now Allflex's number one commercial distributor of custom tags in North America.
Well, and I will say, as somebody we've purchased plain tags through CattleTags. I've purchased EID through the website, like whatever it is, it has been really seamless to purchase. So I'll throw in a plug for you guys. If anyone's looking for some cattle tags, that's a great way to buy them because it is very user-friendly and very easy. So how did CattleScales.com come into the mix?
Sure. CattleScales.com came along a few years later when we were working with TrueTest on making sure that we had a seamless way for the weight to go from the scale indicator into CattleMax. And they'd seen what we were doing with CattleTags.com and said, "Would you guys be open to doing that with us?" And initially I said we didn't really have the time. And the answer really was I didn't have the good domain name. So I later was able to acquire CattleScales.com. We reached out to them, and that's also been a really great relationship. We're their number one distributor in North America for scales and EID readers.
Wow. And I will say, if somebody is listening to this and they are interested in using CattleMax, but they're saying, "Well, I don't have a TrueTest scale or I don't have Allflex tags," the product works and can be integrated with other things. It doesn't have to be those specific brands in order for CattleMax to function at its most efficient, correct?
Yes, that's a really good question. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something we see producers really wrestling with, especially nowadays. I mean, there are other companies out there that are offering all-in-one proprietary tags and proprietary software where you buy this one kind of bundle and it's sort of a walled garden of their products that you really can't move data in and out. Our philosophy has always been give the producers a choice. There's a saying is that you can tell a rancher, but you can't tell a rancher what to do.
Yep, that's accurate.
And that's, hey, we all relate to that. And so we've really been about, we do have some great recommendations with cattle tags and CattleScales, but we also have great relationships with, Data Mars on the Z-Tag side and Gallagher with their scales. Those companies make great products. We work very closely to ensure that CattleMax works with whatever equipment our customers are using.
Okay, that is awesome. I love that. Thank you for sharing that, because I know, like you said, that's something that producers probably wrestle with as well. So you guys have been in business for now coming on 26 years. What has been the biggest lesson about serving producers and growing a company that you have learned so far? I'm sure there have been many. You only have to pick one.
The biggest lesson is that it's twice as hard to get a rancher customer, but they're 5 times as loyal.
Ooh.
You think about, how relational the cattle business is, and it takes a long time to get somebody to have that trust and to build that relationship. But once it's there, they're fiercely loyal. And that's something that we see. As we walk around at the NCBA and the other trade shows and conventions, we're seeing people we've seen for 20 years. Love your product. Have you thought about adding this feature? It's really, you have to work hard to get that relationship, but they're very loyal, a really great group of people.
Oh, I can't echo that enough, because that is so true. I think that that's why one of the reasons that our industry is the way that it is because they are so fiercely loyal, and all agriculturalists, right? It's not just cattle producers. It's the same can be said about farmers or, ag business or whatever it may be. But that was a great thing to share.
I have a 1B too. I guess the 1A, I would say that's the 1A. My 1B is it's really important that the product is designed for ranchers. I've seen a lot of companies over the years come and go because they've got a great solution for doing X, and it's worked really well in other industries. Well, the cattle industry is different, and I see this with the wearables of, we can track cars and lawnmowers and luxury goods. Why can't we track cattle? Like, well, your purse or your car is not going to go running out through the brush country and you not see it for 6 months.
No, actually, just yesterday we were headed out to a branding and we've had to use Vents collars for the last 4 or 5 months because we experienced a burn last year. And so that's the only way that we were able to graze it post fire. And we've not had a problem with cows losing collars whatsoever. But we're also in an area where there's no trees, there's not a lot of brush. But as we were driving out to the branding, we drove through what we call our Vents cows. And I saw one of them itching her neck on a T-post that was on the side of the road. And I thought, oh, I hope your collar stays on. So yes, I totally can relate to that.
Uh-huh.
So what do you think about the next 25 years? We kind of talked about the last 26, but where do you see cattle operations heading, and what role do you think that CattleSoft is going to continue to play in that? I guess we didn't talk about CattleDNA. How do you think that is going to, and the genomics of things will come into play in the next 25 years?
Sure. I think the DNA is going to be a big part of the next 25 years. And in not even waiting that long, I mean, we're already seeing a lot of great results out of DNA now. Neogen and Zoetis and a few of these others have these great genomic tests. So testing the cattle is really important in commercials so that you can really get an understanding of what's there in terms of scores on birth, weaning, yearling, so you can know how those cattle are going to perform. When you look at DNA, it can be an incredible selection tool. If you've got, say, 20 heifers and you want to keep 10, well, you test all 20 and use your results to say, I'm going to keep these, I'm going to sell these. And that way you're not carrying a bad cow and realizing a year and a half later, you should have sold her.
Well, and I think that's a great point because also, too, it would be really interesting if you're talking about, a set of 20, which is a pretty manageable number, for you to get the data back on those animals to pick the top 10 and still go out there and pick what you would consider to be your top 10 and see, are the top 10 that I would have picked actually the bottom 10 based on the DNA?
That's been really fun, too. It's been really fun to look at our CattleMax records, look at the animals in the pasture and what we can tell just by looking at them, and then to take the DNA, the results, and compare. And the results are pretty close, pretty good. It's helped even some on our team of deciding which animals to keep and who to call or who to feed and who not to feed. So it's really an incredible selection tool so that you can make those decisions earlier on and not carry heifers that you shouldn't be carrying.
Well, and two, kind of going back to that example that I used of how we've experienced a burn, wildfire is something that many of us deal with in the Midwest or on the western half of the U.S., like where we're at. And so oftentimes, if you do have to stay off of your grazing permit for a couple of years, chances are you may have to downsize your herd. And it's a hard enough decision to downsize your herd, but that can then be a great tool. And if I am going to downsize, how can I ensure that I'm keeping the best DNA in my herd so that when I can go back on that permit and I am able to continue to grow that herd again, that I'm doing so with those traits in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really all about that trait selection and making sure that you're keeping the animals that work best for your herd and your goals. The same thing could be applied to calves that sell, and you can use your DNA information to know whether you want to retain ownership because it has a great rate of gain, great quality grade, and those kind of scores are, this one's not going to grade as well, so we'll go ahead and let that one go at the local barn.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Well, this has been awesome. Before I let you go, though, we're going to have to do the rapid fire round. These are questions that we ask every guest, with the exception that I'm going to add. I'm going to throw one in for you specifically. What is your favorite breed of cattle?
Favorite breed of cattle? We've had Brangus for years. We had those many years ago. We had some great Brangus. We also had some Tiger Stripes, so Brahman Hereford cross. We got to have some of that ear in our part of Texas.
I was going to say, you're in Texas, so those answers, they definitely make sense. Okay, now for the questions that everybody gets. What do you hope people remember most about you?
I guess I go back and think of something that somebody told me years ago, and that is, no one is ever better than you, and you're not better than anyone else. I go back and look at when we were starting our business, Penny and I, when we were in our early 20s, we had no money. We took wedding gifts back to pay the bills because we believed in our business. And the way that some, mostly competitors, really looked down on us, and it was just a very unpleasant. They really, we're better than you. We even had one year, one came up and said, looks like you kids made it back again. I didn't know y'all would make it. I mean, we had just a lot of this, and that really, I said, whenever we get to a point of having done well in the industries, we want to maintain that humility and just treat people right.
Oh, that is a great answer. What is a non-negotiable in your life?
In Texas, it's chips and queso.
Very accurate.
A real non-negotiable is doing the right thing. Mark Twain said, "You're never wrong to do the right thing." And that's, where we have is our faith in the way that we run our company, and the way that we lead our team and the way our team interacts with our customers. Is it's what we need to do the right thing.
That is one of my favorite quotes, and I tell myself that on a daily basis, I think. So I love that you mentioned that. Okay, if you were a professional athlete, what would your walk-up song be?
Well, back to what I was talking about a while ago, when we were nothing, we felt like we had something to prove. So when you're nothing and you feel like your back's against the wall and your knees are weak and your palms are sweaty, I would say Eminem, Lose Yourself.
I was telling somebody earlier, because we've had a couple of podcasts that I've recorded today, and I probably need to put together a Spotify playlist of all of the songs that people have picked, because we really do. We've had Chris Christopherson mentioned, and Ozzy Osbourne, and Eminem, and Reba McEntire, and it would be quite the playlist.
Yeah, it'd be a great way. You have such an incredible following. I know that when I told some of the people on our team, I said, so I'm going to go on to Jesse's podcast. And you just had this, oh my gosh, it's Jesse's podcast. They were so excited that we were going to be on here, because we have a lot of ranch wives and these huge followers on your team that really like your community and what you talk about. So,
oh, well, thank you. That really means a lot. I appreciate that. What is the smartest thing that somebody's ever told you?
That's a really loaded question on that to answer. I would go back to probably what I said earlier is, no one is ever better than you, and you're not better than anyone else. You may have to edit those around.
No, I think that's perfect. I love that. Okay, last question for you. Favorite things. Do you have a favorite book or podcast or something that has changed your life that you just think more people need to know about, aside from CattleMax?
By far, the thing that has changed my life, my family's life, our kids' life most has been travel. And that's seeing the world. We've been to over 30 countries. And as you go to different countries, you see different cultures and different ways that people do things. I can remember when we were, just last year, we were in Argentina and visiting with one of our customers down there. And he was talking about the volcanoes and how the volcanic ash coated his pasture, and it was causing the cows, their teeth to wear down early. And they had to get metal, almost like grills, if you will, for the cattle.
Wow.
Because the heifers were young. They were still had good life, just no teeth.
Yeah, you can't have a 2-year-old that's a gummer cow. That's not going to work out long term.
Right. And so they had the cows with these, they would put these, I guess, for lack of a better term, grill. And I'm just thinking, you go out to check cows and the cows all look up kind of like rap artists with all the grills in their teeth. So seeing why they do what they do there. Or we were in the northern part near Paraguay, and just the challenges they have in their terrain as we go to different countries. So travel has really opened up, both within the industry. It's helped us better understand different cattle operations and practices. And it's also culturally, as we understand different cultures and why people do what they do.
So on that topic, to kind of expand a little further, where are some of your favorite places that you've been? You said you guys have been to more than 30 countries?
Yes, we've been all over the world. It's really hard to pick where we have enjoyed the most. That's what's so, it's like picking your favorite kid. I have two, and it's a 50-50 shot, but it's really hard to pick. We really enjoy a lot of the culture of Latin America, just the people down there, Argentina, Peru, and having a little bit of Spanish knowledge helps really connect better. But we've also seen beautiful areas in Oman and United Arab Emirates, in Indonesia. It's all different.
Where's your next trip? Do you guys have one on the books?
We are headed to Switzerland is where we go next. We go to Switzerland a time or so a year, and that's also a great chance for us to visit with Datamars at their headquarters there in Limone, Switzerland. So good way to make a business trip out of a visit.
No kidding. Well, this has been a fabulous episode. Thank you so much for sitting down and spending some time with us today. I know that our listeners are going to enjoy this just as much as I have. If somebody's interested in CattleMax, they can go to CattleMax.com. And then obviously the other ones are pretty similar. CattleTags.com, CattleScales.com, CattleDNA.com, and then ranching.com. If somebody wants to get on that email list, they just go to ranching.com, and I'm assuming they can pop their information in the box.
That's exactly. It's ranching.com. It's a free weekly newsletter that is not covered in ads. It's not politics and prices. It's really just specifically on management tips and things that our own team, we all raise cattle. So it's a way our own team is able to share links that we find will be helpful to other producers.
Awesome. Well, you guys definitely go get signed up for that. Thank you again so much for sitting down with us today. This has been just a joy to have you here. And I hope your whole team knows how much I appreciate them and the kind words that they shared about me and about the podcast. That really makes a difference. For those of you who are listening, you guys know you can find us back here next week with a brand new episode of Leaders of the West. Have a great rest of your day and go take on the week. We'll see ya.
If you loved this episode, do us a favor and share it with someone else who might find just as much value in it as you did. We're on a mission to continue to grow and strengthen the future of agriculture and Western industries, and you spreading the word helps us make more of a positive impact. It also makes a big difference when you take a minute to go rate and review the show. We can't thank you enough for listening, for sharing, and for loving Ag and Western as much as we do. We'll see you back here for our next episode.